few people in the room older than 30 to join with me, but I want to underscore the fact that for me, the New Urban Agenda is about young people. That's the bottom line for me, and I'll explain why. When we brought into place the Sustainable Development Goals about a year ago in New York, after 2 years of very intense negotiations by all the member states of the world and indeed the major groups, of which this group was part, when we had negotiated those and brought them into place, a guy like me who's been involved in development all his life, I started out in Fiji just going straight out of university into rural development and spending a decade in rural development. I became very disillusioned about development, and I have a postgraduate degree from Cambridge University in development. I became very dispirited about development because what I was finding was I'd go into a village and build sanitation, you know, where there'd only been open defecation before. I would go in and put in pit latrines with water seal. I would bring a little dam a little stream and bring in pipe water to the village, and we would be putting in things like very basic electrical facilities. But as soon as we put in a road, it only took about 10 years for that village to disappear. And you'd fly over in a helicopter or plane 2 years later, 20 years later, and there'd be no sign that that village was ever there. It was just the bush had taken over. So I thought, what's it all about, this development stuff? You know, people are just all moving to the barrios on the edge of town. It wasn't until in New York a year ago that we brought in that Sustainable Development Agenda, the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, with its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, that I realized, yeah, this is the comprehensive way to go about development. This is what development should be, where you look at everything. You look at the planet's well-being, you look at people's well-being, all people's well-being, universally, their health, their education, all aspects of human life covered in those 17 development goals, and not turning away from the need to have sustainable industrialization and sustainable infrastructure. It's all in there. And I thought, if only I had that plan when I was a young guy going into development, if only I had that then, back in the early 1970s, I would have been able to do such a better job. But we have that plan now. It's a master plan for humanity. It's available all around the world. And I'm happy to tell you, because I earlier this year went on a tour and met with the heads of government of China and India and talked through with them about the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and how they were going in their countries, where nearly half of humanity lives. The great news is that they have incorporated, like most governments have around the world now, they've incorporated the agenda into their national plans. So that's the good news. The governments have taken it on. The governments all agree this is the way to go. But the bad news is, again, with my personal polling around the world, just talking to taxi drivers and barmen and all the rest, nobody knows about the SDGs. Humanity doesn't know about them. You guys probably do because you're kind of a youth elite. But educated members of my family, when I talk to them about the SDGs, they think I'm talking about sexually transmitted diseases or something. Huh? So humanity does not know. That is the challenge that I have set to the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly, which is we have to, by the end of this session, be sure in our minds that everybody knows about this agenda that has been brought into place for everybody. And why does that matter? It matters because the stakes are so very high. My grandchildren will be in jeopardy if we do not achieve success in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So for my selfish personal reasons, I care because I care about my grandchildren. So that should apply to every one of you. Every one of you who's going to have children, who's going to have grandchildren, should be thinking of the attainment of these SDGs in terms of placing them in jeopardy if we don't. The downside of not getting to 2030 and achieving these agendas is a shocking outlook for humanity on this planet. So this is why the stakes are so high, why it's so important that we let humanity know it's okay, there is a plan, there is a way of doing this. But then, how do we get them, having learnt about the plan, how do we get them to change? How do we get the world to transform, which is what this agenda is. It's a very revolutionary, transformative way of human beings living on this planet. It's all at core about consumption and production that we have to change. And I can tell you one thing for sure, my generation won't change. We are selfish. We're the ones that have brought the world to where it is today with CO2 levels causing ocean acidification and causing climate change. And we won't change. You know, you'll get a portion of us, like my family, that are doing that. I don't own a car. You know, I don't even own a house. I don't own a dog, for that matter. I've got a nice wife. That's about it. So for most people of my generation, the idea of success is to own a couple of cars that burn fossil fuels and have a second house out in the country somewhere and drive to that everywhere. That's the idea of success of my generation. And it's unsustainable. It's not the way that humanity should be living on this planet. And my generation is quite happy to use plastic for everything. They don't care that that plastic is biodegrading in the ocean and ending up in fish and coming back into our bodies to cause us to get all sorts of diseases in the future that we're not even aware of yet. They don't care about that. They are the selfish generation. But the time has passed when it's okay to steal from future generations. And your generation should not fall into the trap of stealing from future generations. And you're the generation that is going to cause the success of the 2030 agenda. Why? Because you've got skin in the game. This is your lives. You're going to live with the failure or success of the 2030 agenda. I will not. By the year 2030, I'll be in my grave. It's your agenda. And it's not just the 2030 agenda, it's the Paris Climate Agreement, it's the new urban agenda. These have all got to be worked through. So I say to you, we're going to do what we can at the United Nations. And in me, I assure you, you have a champion that you can turn to if you need things done in New York over the next year. You contact my office. But I'm saying it's up to you. You guys, this is your agenda. You work out the creative ideas of how you're going to make these 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the urban agenda succeed. Because if we don't, the prospects are awful. Thank you very much.